welcome to JsGrassFedGarden. It is, gotta get with it's February 6th, 2023. And
That's right.
this is my good brother Dave. You want to introduce yourself? Or
Yeah. So, name's Dave. Great friends. My brother John here. Thank you for having me on. And
yeah, dude, happy to
yeah,
have you here.
stoked to come on. I've learned a lot about permaculture farming, what have you, from John's given me a lot of inspiration in life, and we'll dive more into that. But just overall, happy to be here. First podcast, live podcast.
Word up.
So, yeah.
Good stuff. So did you grow up with gardening or like anybody growing food in your life?
So actually, I didn't. I grew up on Long Island. We lived on a suburban lot, and all of the gardening was in like perennials and annuals, not for food but for looks, like our garden beds and what have you, and just having a nice front yard, your traditional shrubs and trees and things of that nature, just regular grass, green grass and what have you. So I grew up with gardening, but not on the food side of things, on the cosmetic side of things.
Right on. So that was like just everybody around you, or like your mom or your dad were doing that, or
So my mom would do that, and that actually had inspired me at a young age to get into landscaping. And so during my later middle school years, first high school years, I had gotten into doing some of the people in my town doing their landscaping. And so with that, essentially I would charge per hour and then come do whatever kind of landscaping that I wanted to do. And actually, oddly enough, it was the same kind of no food that I was doing, but it was for visual appealing. Now, granted, one or two of the ladies that I worked for did have raised beds, and I do remember weeding them, but my predominant focus was on things in the front yard, things like weeding beds, remulching, and in an early age, one lady had taught me basically like taking a plant that had grown to a bunch, cutting it down, keeping the root system, replanting it, and so utilizing what she already had in her property in order to expand rather than going and purchasing more things and what have you. So transplanting and splitting up plants. That's something that I was doing for as theoretically as my profession as a younger kid from when I was maybe 12, 13, something like that.
word up, my man. Yeah, that's similar to me too. Like I grew up with the landscaping, doing that with my pops all the time. And it's always for, like you said, like the visual aspect of it. Like you want to make it look nice, but you're running this not all the time. Like you're just saying, you're working in the garden beds and you're working with the plants, but a lot of times it involves like gas powered tools, and you're like just trying to get those nice fine green lines in the
Yep.
grass. But as we're coming to learn, you could be growing food instead of grass right in your back or front yard.
Yeah, which is really amazing to think about, all of that lost space and all of that lost opportunity for multiple things. I mean, from the angle of, imagine me growing up, if instead of, we could have kept all of the beds, the mulch beds, and had like the trees, but imagine if we just took half of our grass and used that to garden, then it could have done multiple things. Number one, it could have taught me as an early age about learning how to grow and garden, creating your own food locally and healthily. And number two, I wonder what kind of income that could have helped to either A, save by not going to the store and buying other alternatives. Number two, created, what happens, you're creating enough food where your neighbor's like looking over your whole block before you know it, is getting lettuce from you, or now you've got some chickens. We had a huge backyard. We could have easily had a dozen chickens. And so I think that I think that for what is really inspiring is not only for yourself and myself to be able to do this, but to inspire other people like we had gotten inspired to do it on their front lawn or their lawn, and to be able to raise their kids in a manner where they're going to learn this stuff. It becomes a part of their life. And now, when it just becomes a part of their life. So they're not just looking at being a consumer of food, also looking at being a producer of food as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think you touched on a lot of great things right there. Um, that last part you said just made me think. I'm just like, yeah, like growing up with it in your life. Kind of what the first question all stemmed from. Like, did you or did you not? And I feel like we never really thought about like where our food came from. Like, just like, oh yeah, you get it. Like, obviously it came from a farm. Like, and I remember going to like farm stands with my grandma and stuff, like around in my like small town in Connecticut, and so it was around. And if anything, like looking back on it, it's like, oh, like my grandma was actually supporting local. Like she was the one like trying to go to the local farm, get that, and just like, but you're a kid and like you don't even like see. So I'm just like, I'm coming up with things, remembering things. And it's like, oh yeah, that actually happened. It's like you don't really appreciate it. Like we used to shuck the stalks on the fresh corn on the back deck, and it's just like knowing that where your food actually comes from, just like it doesn't come from the grocery store, and a lot of the times where it came from in the grocery store, it had came from like 3,000 to like 1,500 miles away. So it's definitely important to
Yeah.
grow up with it in your life, knowing where it came from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if
And,
you're not
and
like growing the food per se, like maybe you just have like, or maybe you just have like enough space to have like a pot with like a cucumber in it or something, or a tomato,
exactly. Just
but
like
just knowing like,
even taking your even taking your seeds, like taking your seeds from your fruit that you're already getting or your veggies that you're already getting, and and turning that into food that you can create. And actually, now I was thinking about it, when we have moved and were living in another town, my mom started a garden with like two raised beds. But this was when I was in high school. But she started two raised beds and just doing onions and things of this nature. And then we started supporting a CSA. And so that this is when actually it all had gotten stemmed from. Now it's going through my memory here. My dad had started to lose weight and learning, and he started running. So doing jogging and running and joining running groups and what have you. And that just like dominoed into transitioning from being a traditional American diet where we're just eating whatever tasted good, and really kind of like that more angle of things and convenience, what have you, to really putting an effort on what we were all eating and where we were sourcing it from. And that's how we started supporting the local CSA. Maybe it was like a mile away from us, and we were maybe one of 50 part of the CSA, and you get a weekly box. And so yeah, now like I said, going through memory again, that
was
there
that
was
still in Long Island?
that was still in Long Island. Yeah, so there was a transitional period for me in my life where we went from, like I said, eating American traditional American diet, what tasted good, what was convenient, and then when my dad, he had gotten more or less obese, and we actually it all like he was it says he was like Fat Keith, because when he looks back at that, that was like a completely different life for him. But what started was he started running and jogging for his heart and just getting healthier, and then it just dominoed into wor- concerning more about where we're getting food. And so then we started supporting the CSA and just started shopping differently. Started started getting
So was your
more
dad
fruit.
more so than your mom that was like, we're like going down this path, and like your mom was like riding with him, or she was
Yeah,
like,
so
obviously she had probably had influence too, but
yeah, so my mom, so my dad had started, and then probably about 6 months later, my mom started running as well. And so then they were both running. And of course, my mom cooks for my dad and for all of us kids. And so naturally, she started since she was cooking everything, she started implementing everything. Like, so she was the one getting like it, coordinating with him on things that he wanted to eat or kind of vegetables, fruit that he wanted to eat. And then she actually took it and ran with it and started making super healthy, like that dish that I made for you, the vegan sweet potato coconut red curry. That's like
uh-huh.
that. That's something that was inspired in that era of like transitioning from
You're
like your
talking about the
traditional.
first meal we had, like with the okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that when and that's a whole other story there. But
Yeah.
yeah, but that first meal that we were on the way from the hemp farm over to my house, and I cooked that vegan curry. That meal was from my mom, and that was from the era of like my dad getting into running and becoming healthy and looking for
So that was one of the
meals.
first like transition meals that's like, all right, this is like our lifestyle now.
Yeah, yeah, I would say, yeah, pretty soon. Like, because then he
How could
had,
you not, transition on that?
I know that meal's, yeah, that meal's incredible. Like, it goes to say that, no matter what view you have on meat or whatever the case may be, you can have a meatless meal that is phenomenal. Like, that's a prime example. That's a prime
For sure.
example.
And I think it's yeah, it's a good note to make that everybody's body is going to react differently to like whatever diet there is. It's just about finding what works best for your body,
Yep.
along with
Yeah,
trying to support as local.
and also what your goal is with your diet. Are you looking to maintain where you're at? Are you looking to lose weight? Are you looking to gain muscle? And so your diet is key into the kind of life that you live or that you're looking to live. And or are you looking to just like a lot, maybe a lot of people I imagine that are getting into this or looking for this kind of information. Prince, relax. I think Prince is uh, dreaming over there. Um,
Buck
so
does
I
that
think
too.
so. I imagine that my best guess would be people transitioning from okay, getting food from the store and eating healthy to then wanting to grow it themselves, grass fed and what have you. They're probably just looking to, or a lot, how can I just make my diet as healthy as possible? Maybe not trying to gain, not trying to lose, just maintain and be as healthy as possible. And so definitely, definitely gardening your own veggies is a great way. You see track everything from A to Z, where you got the seed, what's put into the soil, how it's harvested, and actually, which I learned from you, from the moment that you cut the veggie to the moment that you eat the veggie, every single minute it's decreasing in its value, its nutritional value. And so having the ability to just cut that and then put it right into your dish, that's amazing.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really great thing, and I have to like remind myself that you know it seems like people don't care, and like I've said it before, that people don't care, and it may seem like the grand majority doesn't, but more and more people are starting to care, like where their food's coming from, and wanting to support local. And I mean, even if it's like trendy, I mean, it still might be good because people will just actually find out, like, oh, local is better. Like, they might have just found out by default. But
And local also means that it's less impact on the environment as far as traveling. And so when you're selling somebody lettuce from southern Vermont to southern Vermont, instead of it coming from South America, you're that impact of that has decreased significantly. I mean, it's just all around. You're thinking just increase a decrease on everything. If you go consider not only the fuel, but the impact on the roads, the cars, and what have you, being able to localize that, it just has a multifaceted benefit as far as just being less intrusive on just the world.
Yeah, and again, like just like where food came from, like that's something I never thought about growing up. You know what I'm saying? It's because like we're
I
not
do.
taught that, like unless it's brought in your life, like you know.
And
But
I do
now
know.
it's
Yeah, I know. I 100% know. Now I'm like, I go get fruit and veggies, what have you, and like I'm like, oh, from Peru, from Mexico. Like it has
this
its
one got
full
some
nuance.
miles on it. This
Yeah,
one,
yeah,
and I mean, like let's segue into that. So it's like, at what point do you, um, it's like, okay, these oranges, like they give me vitamin C, but they came from 3,000 miles away or whatever, 1,500, California 3,000. And it's known that even organic oranges, and I'm pretty sure like organic bananas are gassed to ripen them, because they have to pick them when they're green, essentially, and then gas them to like help them ripen, and then they ship them out. So they ripen, like, so you're losing that nutrients because it didn't mature to like its fullest, nutrient ability. You're prematurely harvesting it, and then it gets all those road miles on it, and then whatever it's possibly still gassed, even though it's organic. And but I'm supposed to, I know there's other things to get vitamin C from. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay, so maybe find a different alternative than oranges. I don't know. Like, if you're
yeah,
living in a northern climate, it might not be the most sustainable or regenerative to eat an orange, or like, why would I eat an apple like that's coming from 3,000 miles from Chile? Like, they have Fuji apples year round in the grocery store. Like, you know what I'm saying? It makes
yeah.
no, like, for the past 3 years, I've just been like eating apples in season.
Hmm.
I don't even eat the ones in the grocery store anymore. And people might not want to go that extreme. I just think it's something good to talk about. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
no,
everybody's gonna do them.
that's a that's a great point. I have a couple ideas on that. I would say number one, you said, well, where do you draw like whatever line it is? And I would say that for people that are newly into the space, especially with the cost of food, like if you're saying somebody transitioning from an American diet to a more higher vibration diet, you're really at that point, if it's too expensive to get organic, even transitioning to just getting veggies at all is just going to be better than not. So it's like you don't want somebody to not get into eating veggies just because they're too expensive. And on that
Well, and
point,
say that it's like. Did you want to say one more thing on that?
oh yeah, yeah, I was going to say and this is a little bit of a tangent, but on that point, it's like to get into it, really it's not that complex. You get veggies
Well,
that you
let's
like.
let's talk about it though. I mean, like, getting into it. Like, what do you mean by that?
Getting into it, like, so it could feel like overwhelming. I feel like to you, like, oh,
No, but
how do you
what are we getting into? Are we just getting like, I want to
eating?
eat vegetables, or am I coming aware of like they're
So I think
spraying food with toxic chemicals?
I would say number one would be going from eating Lucky Charms in the morning, let's say, or that equivalent, right, with super pasteurized, ultra pasteurized milk. So that's your breakfast. For lunch, you're eating some kind of like sandwich with cold cut meat or whatever the case may be, and then dinner you're
And a
eating
diet
like,
Pepsi.
yeah, and the Diet Pepsi, and then you're eating like McDonald's or like equivalent or whatever, or some like fast, able to cook fast, craft mac and cheese, whatever the case may be. So for that person, getting to just vegetables in general, getting meat in general, like not even being picky, just getting to that point of cooking at home. I think that that's a big. I think that that would be a big step going away from cold cuts and getting like chicken breast or beef, and then from there, and ideally, you would have the whole step, which would be from American diet right over to your grass-fed beef, pasture-raised, free-range chicken, and organic veggies and what have you. But I would say people that are maybe overwhelmed or the pricing, whatever the case may be, even getting to that middle section is significantly better than where they are. Number one, and number two would be probably they could probably compare their going out and what have you. If they took that out, they could probably get to the second point there at the same cost by just cooking for themselves. So now from your standpoint of view and my standpoint of view, when I'm at the grocery store, I don't even consider the regular vegetables as an option. And when you look at them, they're just like you look at a bell pepper that's grown, it's just like huge, it's like perfect and shiny, and it just doesn't seem right. It doesn't have the flavor profile.
And
It
it's January.
and it's January or whatever. Yeah, it's just so 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 for us that it might seem like, well, you don't want to encourage someone to go to that to eat what we're isn't even on our thing, but at the same point, we're not eating McDonald's 5 days a week. So I think that there's steps.
Yeah, and I mean, there's like just you brought up McDonald's. You want to talk about like a drug addiction? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's chemicals in that food, and like you're literally becoming addicted to it. Just like when you spray the chemicals on a plant, it becomes reliant upon that chemical to grow. So I mean, your body chemistry and your gut bacteria is like, it's like, okay, give me more, because once you start giving it some.
Exactly.
So like, yeah, even if you're eating McDonald's, if you're eating McDonald's 5 days a week, maybe just like you gotta wean yourself off. Maybe you go cold turkey, but like one day a week, then
Yeah,
it's like,
scale
okay,
it down.
then I had like a yogurt or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I started drinking more water. You know what I'm
Totally.
like? It's like there's some little things you can do in your everyday life, just like, oh, I drank water like more often today, or I went out in the sun more often today. Like, it was bright, fun, sunny day. I just went outside, took off my shirt. I
Yep.
never get out in the sun. You know what I'm saying? Just like move your body. Get around. What I wanted to say though
Yep.
was that midway point you were just saying that like the person could come to. Like, maybe they think it's too expensive, but that could be where you show the person of like, all right, then it's realistically cheaper to just grow it yourself. If you invest the money on the seeds, which can last a long time, and then you can save your own seeds from those plants. You basically just have like your own little grocery store garden in the back. You got your carrots, you got your um, lettuce, whatever people like. I don't know, and then you possibly could take it through the entire winter, depending on what climate you're on. In
Yeah, so let me and on that note, for myself, I'll eat like I'll make in a cast iron, cook on 5 or 6, between 4 and 6, like and just olive oil, cucumber. I'll put like a whole cucumber, a whole bell pepper, maybe a couple carrots, and some chicken or some beef. And then before you know it, you've got an awesome, super healthy salt and pepper, just amazing dish. So like for somebody like myself, right? what would a single person or double me, what would you say? What footprint do they need to start with in order to get veggies where they can be utilized in the garden on a daily basis
What
for their
size are you saying that they need?
yeah, like for two
I
people.
mean, I'm led to believe from my memory, I'm pretty sure it's a half acre could sustain a family of 5
Okay,
on a plant-based diet.
and
You could
half.
probably get some meat chickens in there too, though. Like a half acre is a lot of land. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, that's 20. It's 100 by 200 feet. Um, so if you divided that by five, you're looking at like 40 feet by 20 feet, 20 by 40 for a person. And you're saying for the year, like that could sustain them for the year.
well, I'm oh yeah, I mean, for sure. If you have the
Pickle.
techniques implemented to take you through, but yeah, I mean, if you have the ability to grow year round on the land, you just keep it going. Doesn't have to stop.
So
Slow going in the wintertime though, but it's going.
yeah, slow going in the winter time. And so, and I guess, and I asked that point, and that is almost as if you're running, and where it's like running to the finish line, where it's like, okay, how could somebody or a couple do that? But even where could they make a big impact? What size? What size? I mean, you started with a 10 by 20,
No, the original was like 12 by 12, I want to say.
12 by 12,
And I think I'm like close to like 20 by 20 right now.
20 by 20.
So, I mean, just for perspective, I mean, the 12 by 12, like with the 6 to 8, 6 to 9 raised beds, permanent raised beds, that could definitely feed like the two ewes you
Yeah,
were saying,
yeah.
for sure, like all day. Because a lot of people just plant their garden and like put it in and then it's done.
Hmm.
But what I'm learning still and took me a long time to like learn is like, if you have more plants going, like more seedlings, more starts, once one plant is not producing anymore, you can cut that out or cut, not pull it out, but cut it off at the top, leave the roots in the ground, and then you just put another start in that spot, as to where like people just put it in, like, oh, I put my squash in, I put my tomatoes in, I put
Hmm.
like the one round of carrots in or whatever, and then it's like, you could keep on planting from your last frost date to your first frost date, and that's what determines your growing season. And so, like for me, I have I wrote it down here. So in southern Vermont, we have, or in my zone, 5A, we have a 140-day frost-free growing season.
Hmm.
So that's, for all your peppers and pumpkins, tomatoes, all that frost sensitive stuff, squashes, beans. So you got 140 days for all that stuff. And then you have to, figure out a way to preserve it, whether it's freeze it, canning. But then, and then you could have all that. So you grow a good amount of your food in the wintertime, or in the main season, bulk it, store it, and then maybe you get a cow, maybe you get whatever your choice is for sustenance through the wintertime. Maybe you grow 1,000 pounds of potatoes
Yeah.
and a 500 pounds of sweet potatoes. And then you have all your canned vegetables, you have all that goods. And Yeah, and then you could have it set up to where you're just like, okay, now I have my winter greens. I have a high tunnel with low tunnels and then still got green production, things that are cold hardy that'll grow through the wintertime.
Hmm.
So I think that's what I was looking like on the Winter Harvest book written by Elliot Coleman, you know, one of the main inspirations by all this. And he learned from the Europeans, the Parisians, when he went on trips to Europe. That book was published. I don't know if there was earlier publishing of it, but it says 2009 on it.
Hmm.
I only seen that the other day. So when you think about it, it's like, okay, this has really only been, unless you knew about it, he was really one of the first people to bring it to like light. So we're talking 12 years that it's really been around. So you're only gonna, I feel like you're only gonna start seeing more people, more and more people do it.
Yeah, yeah, especially with like even if you were to say just when that knowledge is being in a format for people to be able to digest in a book format or what have you. Because I met somebody yesterday in San Francisco, and he's growing through the entire winter with in the San Francisco area with cucumbers. He pickles full time now, and I had given you a little bit of information on that. He uses the Hugo method. I'm sure you're familiar a little bit with the Hugo method,
For
and
sure.
or and so what he did was 2.5 years ago, he buried logs 2.5 feet below in his.
How deep did you say his raised beds were?
He does
That
3 foot raised beds, and he buried the logs, I think 2.5 feet below, and just a bunch of logs. And when they break down, not only they're creating nutrients, but they're also keeping the soil more warm. So it allows
mhm.
him to be able to grow through the winter. And I tried some of his pickles yesterday; it was phenomenal.
I wonder what zone they are over in San Francisco. They probably don't get much of a winter down there, but
Is I'm doing quick search here. My
yeah,
phone is 10A. Wow.
damn. So like that's almost tropical, dog. Like you're like, dude, that's more than Florida. Like you're growing bananas in San Francisco, dog. Like
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
did
Definitely.
they have bananas and stuff?
They've got lemons. Yeah, lemon trees. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What does it say? How cold does Zone 10A get down to?
Uh,
It'll say like the coldest that it could possibly get down to on the side. With that, I'm gonna.
30, 30 to 35 degrees would be the minimum temperature for 10A. Yeah, the just
Oh,
last
dude, so you
week.
could grow bananas no problem because
Yeah, just
bananas could take down to like 29.
yeah, just last week, when Shinga sent me a photo of a lemon growing over her fence. Like her neighbor has a lemon tree, and she was able to like go pick the lemon and then utilize it in her dish. It's pretty
Dog.
amazing.
I mean, yeah, that's one of my visions. Is like, well, it's kind of about the guy growing the oranges in Nebraska.
Of course. Well, actually, thank God you brought this up, because I was about to say that's how we could split the gap with geothermal and the use of the sun. We could be growing oranges and fruit and veggies right where you're at.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. If you had a hot house, and this is my vision for if maybe there's somebody out there doing it. If you are, reach out.
Definitely.
But have a hot house like with the geothermal, because I'm pretty sure the geothermal keeps it at like 50
Yep.
degrees. By using the core temperature of the Earth, you go down like 8 or 10 feet depending on where your frost
Yep.
layer is. And you just bring it up with fans. But yeah, dude, Vermont bananas. If you had a hot house that you didn't go below 29 degrees, you could have Vermont bananas, citrus, and then, like, yeah, so
Yo,
the
you said
possibilities are, and we're just like, we're talking about, this is not trying to be like, oh, we're above and beyond, but like, this is advanced. If, because we were just talking about like, maybe you're just trying to get into like, if you're just trying to think about like where your food comes from and eating healthier food, you're probably not. Maybe you do want to be thinking about oranges in a northern climate. That could get you all into it too. I mean, that's kind of some of the things that, stem my interest. It's like, whoa, you could be doing this.
and you know what I would say is that although it is advanced, being able to see the capabilities allows you to see, first of all, this is being done in my same grow climate. So if he's doing that in 4B, realistically, anywhere in the United States, you could do that. I mean, they're hitting temperatures every year of like -10, -5 degrees, and he still has those fruit trees prospering. And for anybody that's trying to figure out what we're talking about, if you YouTube Nebraska Zone B
Just
citrus,
Nebraska orange, like
yeah,
old man in
Nebraska
the
oranges, Old Man in Nebraska. I think that's literally in the title. Yeah,
yeah,
Old
I'm
Man.
sure old man grows oranges like
Yeah, in
Nebraska.
Nebraska. Yeah, and he supplies tons of oranges in his area because they're only being shipped within 50 miles or what have you. And
And those aren't, imagine, and like he talks about it in that they get probably more sweet because the cooler temperatures
yep.
of the outside layer, the starches convert to sugars, just like.
Yeah, it allows you to see it. I think that seeing that bigger picture allows you to see what's possible. So then when you're looking at your 10 by 10 raised bed, it's like, "Oh yeah, this is no biggie." Like it just puts things into perspective of like, okay, you look at a marathon runner, you get inspired, and then you go do a 5K. So you look at this guy, he's older, has this phenomenal facility that not only is just incredible, but utilizes and harnesses Earth's energy in order to keep that prospering year round. So you have the geothermal underneath, you have the south facing solar greenhouse, and actually, I believe that there's a vapor barrier on his greenhouse. So you have like a vapor barrier greenhouse south facing, utilizing geothermal, and the geothermal that I believe he's using is underground. You run copper tubing a few hundred feet, and you have a circulating water line, and you could use antifreeze so it doesn't freeze. Use antifreeze, circulating antifreeze line or circulating water line, and then you run that water line over a radiator, and then you have a fan blow over the radiator. Now, I could be wrong. He could be using a. It's been a little while since I watched that video. He could be using the corrugated air tubes, and then the corrugated air tubes is simply where you run air through the earth. It seems like from the research that I've done, the more sustainable option, when I say sustainable length living wise, seems to be the copper tubing with the liquid. Just because if you have a penetration in your air tube from then the corrugated air tube, it can cause problems. It can cause poor air supply, poor air quality. If you're talking over 5, 10,
The
15, 20
water's not
years.
gonna freeze though
If you
if
use,
that pipe's.
yeah, if you
No,
use,
I'm saying not the antifreeze, because the pipe's at below the. It
oh,
doesn't
oh,
freeze down there. It's below the frost line.
but
No.
yes, you're right. But it does have to come back up to Earth
So
it
it will
has to come
come
back.
out for just
It
yeah.
comes out frozen. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So from what I saw is that if you are in a colder climate where you are going to get freezing temperatures in
Well,
that
there's
first few
also
feet.
like composting systems and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, you're right.
Remember the guy, the big hay mound?
I do, I
That
do.
one. Ben,
That
I think his name's Ben Falk. He's like a permaculture homie up in Vermont.
yeah, it actually now that you just sparked that idea again because that's all above ground. So you're just doing you have your copper tubing in
Uh
your
huh.
hay and your compost,
mulch pile
your
surrounded
mulch
by hay
pile
bales.
surrounded by hay bales, and then you're running that. He runs that directly to his building, and he
For the
heats the whole
I
building with
think he
that.
heats his house like that, but it runs straight to the greenhouse too, with just like an electric fan that pull the heat from it.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's the same concept. And what I wanted to add, my point there was, is that I think that the copper tubing with the liquid underneath the earth running over a radiator and blowing that air seems to be the model that seems to be the most healthy and the most longevity. Like, you're going to be able to have that system for 50, it might outlive you, 50 plus years.
What if the antifreeze pipe breaks though?
Definitely. That definitely could be possible. I don't know how you could refrain from that happening, looking into different kinds of tubing available, what have you. I mean, with everything, you're going to have costs. You're going to have possibilities. What deterred me when I was looking into geothermal with the air is just the air quality underneath the earth. You have a lot of moisture. You have the ability to create mold and things of this nature. And so, what you don't want is to set up this entire system, and now you're circulating mold into your greenhouse. That was the thing that really was a more or less deal breaker in my thought process of it.
No, it makes
Because
sense. I mean, you want to be breathing some good fungi, not some bad fungi.
yeah, yeah,
Like there's
exactly.
good microbes and bad microbes, you know? Like you don't want that bad stuff.
Yeah, so I think that you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. It seems like you have these expensive geothermal systems that you can do for 10 to 20K. And on that note, with the new tax incentives, you can get a fair chunk of that taken off of your taxes. So somebody that is, let's say, normal working professional or has an LLC, S corp, what have you, that's paying X amount in taxes a year, you can write off you can write off 30 or 40% of a system. With if you get a more expensive system, you could also just do your own copper line or whatever kind of line. Go get a what I've seen people doing is getting a car radiator. You get a car radiator, you have the input and the output from the earth, and then you have a fan blow over the car radiator. And so that in combination with your solar from your is
And then you got the re-engineered washer machine hydro
yeah,
you do you remember that one?
exactly. If you're
Yeah,
exactly if
connected
you're
to the
looking
battery with the solar panel.
if you're in a position where you're trying to go buy property, always do your best to find running water near the property. It doesn't need to be a lot, as long as it's year round, because that could be. It might not power your. Let's see. It might not power your most heavy electric conducive things, but it'll power your lights.
Even
Your
if you had a seasonal one, you could use it in the springtime during the thaw and then switch over to your other source. Maybe you got
Yep.
wind or something.
Yeah. No, yeah. You could. I mean, I've that the person that I know, that you probably know as well, in New Zealand, he had he has the re-engineered washing machine in New Zealand that him and his wife were using off grid for like 10 years without even maintenance. And he did a video going back to it 10 years later with like grass. And like, he's like, yeah, we're not producing as much electricity as we were. So like, they come down, he's like cleaning everything out, and then boom, done. Another 5 or 10 years of free electricity. So it's just incredible.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely incredible these ways. Yeah, I don't know what lifestyle people are trying to live, but I'm definitely interested in more cost-effective ways of using energy, more regenerative ways of living.
Yep.
trying to minimize my amount of consumption that I put out into this world,
Yeah.
and just yeah, just
Yeah.
trying to take care of the earth.
I think that it would be interesting to like kind of break it down, like, okay, types of people, where they're at, what their goals are, and,
Like a
and
graph.
yeah, like some kind of graph, or just like, okay, like if this is where you're at, these are the stage that you can be in, or what have you. And then even going into more depth with that, it's like, okay, if you live in a suburban area, how much land do you have? And then from there, front yard, backyard, and then let's say if your goal is to go off grid, what are your options? What's your cost? And so more or less, just in my head, I'm
Yeah,
envisioning like just kind of like,
maybe you like suburban living,
yeah,
but you want to still grow your own food. Like you want to, that's perfectly fine.
yeah, it's completely fine. And actually, by living in a suburban area, which we learned from homie in Florida, he utilizes living in a suburban area to his huge advantage, where he delivers all of his veggies within 3 miles. They come to
On
him,
on
or
a
he
bike trailer.
on a bike trailer, and he's doing it big, actually.
Yeah, and
But
that's what he talks about is the positive aspects of living in a suburban area is that you just transport it, and then since you're in that area with all the industry, then the industry can transport it out then. But I don't know if that makes any sense.
yeah, you get it to wholesalers.
There's more stuff around just to make it move
Yep,
overall.
yep, yep, yeah, directly to him. I remember he was saying a majority of it goes just within 3 miles of where he lives.
Yeah,
And
and then you do the local farmers market. I wanted to get into one thing real
yeah,
quick. I do this every podcast. This is the weekly temp update. So just gonna go over all the temps. That is it backwards for you?
nope, looks great.
Yeah, it's backwards for me. So it's always tricky doing this. But so back to last Monday, we have January 30th. The low was 35 and the high was 38. Go to the 31st. Um, I know this is going to be weird, but the high was 25, meaning because the high is recorded at the end of the day and the low is recorded at the beginning of the day.
Yep.
So the low was 35. So when around 8 a.m. or whatever, and then it dropped down to 25 over
Okay.
the course of the day.
Yep.
So then on February 1st, 35 for the high, 12 for the low. So
Yep.
dropping to February 2nd, 39 for the high, 24 for the low. And then on February 3rd, we got 14 for the low, 7 for the high. So dropping again. And then on the 4th, the high was 7 and the low was -10
Ooh,
without the wind chill.
ooh,
With
those
the
are
wind
pretty
chill, it
good.
was like -32. And then the very next day, the 5th, yesterday, the high was 48
Wow,
and the low was 38. And then today, 42 and 36.
that's unbelievable. That change in temperature.
And I've witnessed this many times. I don't want to say it's just like becoming normal now, but over the years, I have witnessed fluctuations like this many times. But usually we get negative temperatures that last for like at least a week. But for it to go from negative -10 to then 48 the very next day. I mean, that's just, it can't be good for our bodies and it can't be good for wildlife. It can't be good for anything. I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative here. I'm just like making a point of just like whatever. I'm not saying that it's anything. I'm just making up, this is a record that I recorded. This is a fact. This happened, and I'm just making my observation based upon the record that I've recorded. And I've been observing these fluctuations for many years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see the fluctuations. I think that actually we were talking about this in Vermont. Oddly enough, things warming up for you end up creating a longer grow season, where in other places things warming up create fires, like California. Things warming up in Vermont, actually, as far as the grow season is concerned, is a good thing in that angle.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky because I've been saying this. I've said it many times over many videos recorded on this channel, and I'll say it again. The fall takes longer to kick in, and the spring takes longer to come.
Hmm.
So, like last year, it didn't get cold until January.
Hmm.
This year, it didn't get cold until February. So, and then it's last year, we had a few 40 degrees nights in June. That's almost in the 30s in June, like in spring when it's supposed to be getting warmer. And I've talked to people who've lived in Vermont for many years, and like they all say that like there used to be a spring, like the spring that we remember growing up, like that you remember in Long Island, I remember in Connecticut, probably
Yeah.
was similar. He was like, April, it was beautiful, like, warming up, May, beautiful. Now it just lingers. So it's like almost like the seasons have completely reversed. Like when it's supposed to be getting warmer, it's colder, and when it's supposed to be getting colder, it's warmer. And that's
Yeah.
that's a fact.
That'll be interesting to see over the next 5 to 10 years, kind of where
Yeah,
things.
that's I'm like, does it just stop? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's like, does it just come to a middle point where it's like, okay, just like winter's gone now, and then I
Yeah.
mean that's where we're going to. It's like, yeah, then you're growing year round in Vermont, no problem. But
Yeah.
we
That.
go through fluctuations, and we've only been here for 23, 25 years, so we don't know what has happened on the long scale, like the
Yeah.
long term scale. Like, although there's all these other factors of like greenhouse emissions, methane, CO2, all the other bad stuff, PCBs, just whatever, microplastics, just toxic slurries, you name it. We don't know, what happened before, you know what I'm saying? So there could have been these fluctuations before, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm
Maybe
just putting
it's
that out
maybe
there.
it's strange. Maybe it seems strange, but maybe it's not as strange as it seems, or what have you. So it's multifaceted, but it kind of goes on that train where it's like, okay, definitely want to have control of what we can have control over, and want to also spread your message of like the greater things that you believe in and what have you, and more or less is like we said, we can control what we can control. So what can you control to the best of your ability? You can be prepared for these kinds of weather snaps. So you record everything, so in June you might have those colder days. So instead of being unprepared, you've got that knowledge, and so you're going to be you'll be prepared. You'll
Hey,
be
buddy.
you'll be you'll be prepared for that. And actually, which segues me into what I've started. And so, how could you completely, if you were to say, not considering nature or outdoor temperatures, what can you do on a year-round basis? And so one thing that I've started to do is grow microgreens. And so actually I'm in the beginning phases and getting things dialed down, getting on a rotation where I'm planting every 4 days. And then what I'm going to do is just start getting the word out, neighbors, farm stand, have you, and for even for myself, which is where I've started with. So microgreens, if you don't know, essentially, it's going to be a closely dense area of seeds. You might use kale, you might use peas. I use right now lettuce, so mustard, basic mustard, lettuce, and then also your just standard lettuce. And so what you do is you'll have a tray, normal tray, actually a little bit thinner. So a regular tray might be about this thickness, couple inches. This tray is going to be about an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and fill it up. I use soil, organic soil. Lay the seed, and you're from seed to harvest about 10 to 13 days, and you've got it's a very nutrient dense lettuce. You could use it just like any other lettuce that you use, and it allows you, and you could, that's something you could do right away. That's something, so we're talking about front yards. There's a lot of people that don't have front yard, so they've got an apartment, and how could they cut costs? How can they get into growing just in general? Well, microgreens are a great way that you can get into just growing in general. If you have an apartment, you have a balcony, what have you. And what you could do is you could simply start by going on Facebook Marketplace, finding a shelving unit, so like 4 shelves, or you could even start by just having really what you need is a couple feet between your light and your trays, and just something to be able to hold your lights. And then without getting too fancy, you can get into it with getting shop lights. So T5, T8 lights. The ones that I like are the Barilla lights. You get them right on Amazon.
So
Barilla light.
on a good yield, how much does each tray like produce?
So I'm
Depending on the
actually,
size of the tray, probably.
yeah, I'm actually diving into that. There's tons of information on YouTube about growing microgreens. Right now, I've been growing them, getting them
What have your
dialed.
first crops been like? Your first harvest?
Tremendous. I mean, I'll it probably I could probably get 4 big dishes out of a tray. Like if I cut like a ton of lettuce to put into a stir fry, you could probably do a good 4 big dishes out of one tray. And you're talking like uh, cents for your seeds. You're
And
talking like,
does that regrow, or it you have to just like replant it? You cut it once and it's done.
so actually
My
it
phone is on 10%. I have it plugged in, but it's not charging for some reason.
okay.
So let's finish up on this last question, and we got like 2 minutes left, and we're locked in for an hour.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then there will be a Dave brother conversation part two, where we get into a whole bunch of more great things about just like what we're talking about now. If you're interested in, tune
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Yeah, and by that point, let's say if it's in a month, then I'll have some more. I'll get some metrics on the micros, so we'll have that dialed. And but I would say that tons of information online. I'm in the beginning stages of it, and they taste phenomenal.
So
I
the regrow, does it regrow?
yeah, they will regrow. Yep, they'll
Oh,
regrow.
word! So you could get multiple cuts off of one tray.
Yeah, it seems like you can. It seems like I don't know the exact timeline. Let me actually I'll take some notes here.
There might be better um, microgreens for
Regrow.
like I know the lettuce will probably definitely do it,
Yep.
but like pea shoots probably won't. Just my observation.
Yeah, so just taking some notes here. So regrowing and harvest weights. Great. So yeah, I'll have some info on that, and then and yeah, I would just say that seems like a and that's something that you can do year round. So when you're not, let's say you're not growing in the winter time because you don't have the greenhouse or whatever the case may be, you're in an apartment or whatever the case may be, then you're able to do this year round and help supplement your lettuce from the grocery store, getting something nutrient packed, even if you're just doing it for yourself.
Yeah, that would be cool because I mean, something that I see there's so much more stuff to talk about. I don't know why my thing's not charging, but I just don't want it to die because then the video might not upload.
Oh, gotcha,
So let's
gotcha.
just
Yeah. Okay,
rock
okay, okay,
it,
okay, okay. Yeah.
and we'll pick up where we left off. How about that? And then
Perfect.
we
Sounds
could watch
awesome.
this back, and then yeah,
Yeah. No, sounds great. Yeah, it was super awesome to have a podcast for first podcast, and we've got tons that we can dive into. So it's no problem.
word, bro. Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to the future of your growth and
Yeah.
myself, and I hope everyone enjoyed. If anybody got anything from it, blessings to you, and thanks for your support. Yeah, anything else?
No. That's all for now. Stay healthy, happy, drink tons of water, and we'll be connected soon.
All right, man. Much love to you. I'll give you a call.
All right, sounds great, brother. Yo,
All right,
wholeness,
man.
everybody.
Peace.
Have a great one.
Hey, man. Peace to everyone.
Peace,
One
peace.
love.
One love.